Good evening, everyone, and my name is Rick Staub from the Notre Dame Club of Gettysburg. Welcome you back to Corby Connection. Hope everybody's having a great summer. Tonight, our special guest is our Mid-Atlantic Regional Director for the NDAA, Mr. Michael Brooker. Before we get to Michael, we need to bring on your host, Pat Colley. Pat, all yours.
Thank you, Rick. And Michael, it's so great to have you too as the director of the Mid-Atlantic region. I think it's important for members of the Notre Dame Club of Gettysburg and people around the region to hear from people who are in leadership, because it seems like every time people go to a bingo event or a road cleanup or a game watch or whatever it might be that the club is doing, they know they're part of the Notre Dame family worldwide, but they don't always know the people who are sort of making things happen for the Notre Dame Alumni Association. So we're really very happy that you could join us for this program.
Well, I want to thank the Notre Dame Club of Gettysburg and Rick and Pat in particular for having me tonight on Corby Connections. I'm a frequent follower of your previous episodes, so it's great to be with you, and I look forward to sharing information with you as we go through the evening.
It has not escaped my notice that whenever we post one of these interviews onto our Facebook page, it seems like barely 5 minutes goes by and the Notre Dame Club of Greensburg is liking it. And so that's always, very encouraging for us. But you live in Greensburg with your family, and, let's talk about, recently what you're doing there in Greensburg. I understand that you are involved extensively in work in service of military veterans, which of course is something that is near and dear to the hearts of people in Gettysburg. Tell us a little bit about that.
I will. So I retired from the Marine Corps after 27 years of service in 2007, and my wife and I are both from the East Coast. I grew up primarily in North Carolina, she in Maryland. So I came back to Pennsylvania for a job. I was a pilot flying mid-sized business jets out of Arnold Palmer Airport in Latrobe. And so that's what brought us back to this area. You mentioned help with veterans. Most recently, in February of 2020, I retired as a National Service Officer with Disabled American Veterans, helping veterans get earned benefits, that them and their families get earned benefits from the VA. Very rewarding position. And, of course, in March, the pandemic hit, and, working from home, in July, I became the regional director. And so it seems now with that, and also in March, I was appointed by Governor Wolf to the State Veterans Commission. And so have been working on that for the last 4 months. And, helping veterans in Pennsylvania, working with the Pennsylvania Department of Military and Veteran Affairs, dealing with issues of homelessness, dealing with issues of PTSD and things like that. As a member at large on that commission, there are 4 member at large commissioners. It's a very rewarding work for me. And, as Gettysburg knows, and that, the state of Pennsylvania, while we have few military installations, I think it's number 2 or number 3 as number of veterans who live in Pennsylvania, and Pennsylvania definitely supports veterans. So that's kind of what I've been doing lately. You mentioned my family. I have my wife, Mimi, and in July, coming up 3 weeks away or so, we're going to celebrate our 35th wedding anniversary. So, kind of marking a milestone there. And we have no children, but we have our dog, Golden Retriever Olive, and we have 3 Maine Coon cats that, so 4-legged children that keep us busy and quite occupied.
Well, congratulations on that milestone to you and your wife. That's fantastic. And you're absolutely right that Pennsylvania has a lot of veterans, and Pennsylvania, the people of Pennsylvania and the government of Pennsylvania very much support those veterans. In my line of work, I have a good relationship with the county veterans director in Cumberland County, and he is on a mission because to go out and educate people, as I'm sure you have been doing in your roles, because it seems that not a week goes by where he doesn't meet somebody who's been paying for something that they didn't need to be paying for, and having a burden on them because they earned a benefit as a veteran, and they should be relying on both the VA as well as, you know, the posts that are out there who are more than happy to go out and help a veteran in need. So that's fantastic that you do that work. And I saw somewhere that in particular, you're involved with something involving veterans and beekeeping. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, so last year in 2020, my wife is the director of the Pennsylvania Veteran Farming Project, which she received a grant from the U.S. Department of Agriculture to set up a network in Pennsylvania of veteran farmers and agribusinesses. And so she has the network, and it supports veteran farmers in the state. And so a component of that was an idea that we had of that we call Bee Boot Camp. And there are studies and anecdotal evidence in the VA that beekeeping is very therapeutic for veterans. And so last year we began our first class. We had a veteran farm out by the Pittsburgh Airport, veteran-owned farm, Forever Heart Farm, and we established a partnership with the Michigan State Heroes to Hives, which is a college-level beekeeping course offered free to veterans from Michigan State University. So even though it's a Notre Dame podcast, I have to give a shout out to Adam Ingrau, and who is the director there, a veteran, Army veteran. So we partner with them for the academics, and then we partner with the Pennsylvania State Beekeeping Association as our instructors. And so last year we had 7 veterans complete the course, and we received that funding to do that from Greater Pittsburgh DAV Chapter 8. And then we also received a grant from the Pennsylvania Veterans Trust Fund to expand our operations. So in 2021, we're in 3 sites. The site out in Moon Township by the airport. We're at Harrisburg Area Community College there near you. And then we're in Wapwallopen, PA at Keener Apiary, which is in Lucerne County near Wilkes-Barre. So we have 3 apiaries going and 36 veterans who are involved with it. And it's really a successful program. We just completed 2 of the sites completed their classes on Sunday, Father's Day, and getting a lot of positive feedback from the instructors of how the veterans are enjoying it and learning a lot.
That's fantastic. And we will allow the one reference to Michigan State, but if you happen to be doing work with Southern Cal, I recommend you just keep that to yourself this evening. But great work with Michigan State. And you know, this extended Gulf War era has introduced so many challenges with the reentry of veterans back into civilian life. And we're finding out so much about, as you mentioned, PTSD, but also traumatic brain injuries. We're having to reshape criminal justice policy to understand that, you know, the behavior, the aberrant behavior that we sometimes see from a veteran is directly linked to trauma that they either organic trauma or just the psychological trauma of their service. So thank you for being on the front lines of that, especially not only in the sort of creative work that you're doing with the agricultural type endeavor, but also on the State Veterans Commission. We really appreciate your work on those important issues. So, you know, you mentioned in passing that you are a native of North Carolina, your wife a native of Maryland. How did you end up out in South Bend?
Well, you know, growing up, I was actually born, my father was in the Air Force. I was born at Plattsburgh Air Force Base, and then he was transferred to Pope Air Force Base in Fayetteville, North Carolina, right next to Fort Bragg, and he flew C-130s at the time. And so, you know, we had really no family connection, no one who had been to Notre Dame. So like many people of that era, we were fans of the Notre Dame football team. And, you know, I can vividly remember, watching the games on Sunday, and due to time constraints moving forward in the third quarter, where they would show the replays of the Notre Dame games. And I can also vividly remember we went to church on base at Fort Bragg, at the Smoke Bomb Hill Chapel. The Fort Bragg chapels were all named after our famous Army battles. So we had, in the Sugar Bowl of 1973, we had the priests from there with us at our home watching the game, which, when I think back at how small our television was and how many people we had crowded around it, to see, Clements pass to Robin Weber out of the end zone to preserve the victory over Alabama. And kind of, Robin Weber was a tight end, and I played tight end in high school in football. So I had that little bit of a connection, and also too, it was the place I wanted to go. And my father, one of his squadron mates, he was in a reserve squadron at the time out of Charleston Air Force Base, was Joe Doyle, who was the longtime sports editor of the South Bend Tribune. And so, when we would get together for squadron picnics or get together for squadron activities, Joe was always there drilling. And, I would, talk to him about Notre Dame football. And when I was accepted, I went up for a visit. And, at the time, 1975, 1976, I took the bus to get there from North Carolina. It was a 13-hour bus ride, which I think, came up, through the Mid-Atlantic and then got on the Pennsylvania Turnpike and went that way. So I probably passed close by to Gettysburg on my way there. But Joe Doyle picked me up at the bus station, had me at his house, took me to campus. And, same when I came back as a freshman, he picked me up at the bus station and took me to his house. We had dinner, and he dropped me off. So it was always a good connection for that.
That's great. And, I understand that when you were out there, you were a member of the Naval ROTC program. And I was going to ask, did you know coming out to South Bend that you wanted to pursue a career in the service and in one of the military branches? And it sounds like, having been born on the Plattsburgh Air Force Base and living at Fort Bragg, that this was maybe preordained, or if not, something that you couldn't possibly avoid thinking about.
Yeah, that as I mentioned, my father was in the Air Force, and my uncle served in the Marine Corps. And so he served for 4 years and was commissioned out of Rochester Polytechnic Institute. But I can remember going to his house, and he, over his fireplace, he had his Mameluke sword, which is the sword that officers carry in the Marine Corps. And I remember looking at that and thinking, boy, that someday that would be nice if I could have that. So I was fortunate enough to get scholarships to all 3 of the services, or be offered scholarships to all 3 of the services. And when I was on my campus visit to Notre Dame, I went, if you remember, the old ROTC building, kind of on the St. Mary's end of, the west end of the campus. All 3 of the services were, the Naval Service, the Air Force, and Army were all gathered into there, and the Navy was on the first floor, and the Army and the Air Force were on the second floor. And when I went into the building, I had such great visit and great rapport with the folks who were there on the Navy side. I didn't even go up to the Army or the Air Force side, and ended up choosing to take a Marine option with a Navy ROTC scholarship.
So talk to me about what happened after graduation, because you mentioned 27 years in the United States Marine Corps. I've read about some of your experiences, and I can only imagine there were many, many more. So give us an overview of the kind of experiences you had.
Yeah, I mean, it truly was a lifetime of experience. In the early parts, we were still in the Cold War. And I can remember doing deployments out of Camp Lejeune. You know, as a pilot, I flew, we're flying Hueys at the time, UH-1s. You know, we would fly onto our LHA or LPH, the Navy ships, and then leave from Morehead City with usually a 4-ship group. And there would be a Soviet ship that would tail us across the Mediterranean or across the Atlantic, and then another one would pick us up as we went into the Mediterranean. But there was, at that time, you know, really no shooting going on. So it was, you know, port visits and things like that in the Mediterranean, a lot of flying, a lot of great experiences visiting, you know, other countries. I've been, you know, I think when I count it all up, you know, probably to 60 different countries during my lifetime, either through flying commercially or with my service in the Marine Corps. So that was always kind of one of the highlights, was to get to go on liberty and or work with foreign militaries, doing exercises with them and learning about their customs and cultures. And so, you know, as I mentioned being a pilot, when I first came to my squadron, one of my instructors, a fellow named Tom Cavanaugh, he didn't go to Notre Dame, but he was a big Notre Dame fan. And so when you come to your first squadron, one of the things they do is give you a call sign. If you remember Top Gun, you know, Maverick and Ice and all of that. Well, Tom Cavanaugh saw to it that I got the call sign Gipper, as being a Notre Dame grad, and really, you know, throughout my career, it always served me well that people knew, you know, kind of where I was from and what I was about whenever I, you know, mentioned my call sign. So, you know, very fortunate, was able to stay in the cockpit for quite some time. But then was called to duties at Headquarters Marine Corps, and, you know, really enjoyed that tour because I was able to work with many officers from the other services while we were there. And leaving that tour, I was able to get squadron command, which I actually started as an infantry officer because the aviation guarantees were closed to us when we were graduating from college. It was something that I was in the process of applying for my senior year at Notre Dame, but due to the, you know, the Navy was trying to get the 600 ship Navy, Admiral Zumwalt, who was CNO at the time, was trying to get an all nuclear Navy. So they were trying to get nuclear powered officers. And so the kind of trick for people who didn't want to go nuclear power was they had thought they could get into aviation. So, you know, it worked for a while, but then the powers that be figured that out. So they closed the guarantee. So that's my dog Olive in the background there. I don't know if you can hear. She's saying hello. She's saying go Irish, I think. But anyway, so I started out in the infantry, and then was able to go to Pensacola and earn my Naval Wings of Gold there. And then, as I mentioned, towards the end of my career, served on many staff billets, and, you know, two that you had mentioned, or that I'll speak about briefly, was chosen as for the startup of Iraqi Freedom. Was selected by General Amos, who later became Commandant of the Marine Corps, to be the third MAW, the 3rd Marine Aircraft Wing forward, the lead for building up our capability in country in Kuwait. And so I was working with 2 Navy CB battalions, and, you know, it just really great people. We were constructing a building concrete runways and airfields, and the CBs, they were working 3 shifts, 24 hours a day to get that done. You know, prior to you know, the potential of hostilities, and the doing that was very rewarding. We had a very small team working in hand with our Air Force hosts who had been there in country, but we were coming in, a very large size Marine force coming in to do that. And then kind of at the tail end of that, the Navy and Marine Corps were experimenting on, they've always had carrier strike groups where the carrier and its accompanying ships always had a one-star admiral that was in charge of it, and the amphibious strike groups that had the Marines would have like a Navy captain or a Commodore. So they were experimenting with forming a similar type for the Expeditionary Forces Expeditionary Strike Group. And I was selected to be the first deputy commander of that group. And it was a very rewarding experience working with, we had our typical amphibious ships, but we also had a destroyer, a cruiser, a frigate, and a submarine, the USS Greenville. So, being on the Greenville, looking through the periscope, kind of that, make-a-wish kind of thing of bucket lists of stuff that you would want to do, controlling gunfire from a 5-inch gun on the destroyer, or looking at their Aegis system. As a Marine, it was like I was like a kid in a candy store. So I guess those were some of the highlights of my military career.
It sounds like you came quite a long way from just wanting that sword that was up on the mantle to having that experience. But throughout all of those experiences, I have to think that you developed a lot of insights into being a leader. And it's not just, a lot of people think of leader, they think of one person, the president or some other one official, but everything you just described, whether it was working with the service members from another country and learning their culture, to working with different branches, working with the Seabees from the Navy, working with the Air Force, you're working as parts of teams, and there's no way that one person could really pull it all off together. Everybody's bringing their own talents. What are some of the lessons? I mean, was it an intensive course in leadership over the course of your career?
Yeah, it definitely was. And, you kind of, I guess personally, I've always, felt that there is the team. The Marine Corps is the smallest service. We kind of have to work together, and kind of our philosophy in combat arms is a team to make a single combat force. And I had many mentors throughout my career in the Marine Corps and serving in the Pentagon, that when I mentioned the ESG-1, Vice Admiral Conway, working for a Navy boss for the first time, he was a very big Notre Dame fan, went to St. Francis University in Loretto, PA. He's a graduate of there. So shout out to them. But he taught me you can only expect what you inspect. And that doesn't so much necessarily mean micromanage, but it does mean that you have to, provide what your expectations are to your team, and then make sure or follow up that they're achieving what it is that you want to do. And, as a regional director, I'm very fortunate. I have a great team that works with me. We have our regional director network, our senior alumni, Chris Reddick, out of DC. We have our young alumni, or young ND, Matt McCurdy, who's in the Notre Dame Club of Richmond. We have Maura Boston, who's the ND Women Connect, and she's out of the DC club, but currently in Pittsburgh. And then I have Eliza Hernandez, who's our diversity coordinator. And, it's just a pleasure working, with them throughout. But, in leadership, what I've learned, I guess, is, to be yourself. Don't try to be someone else. I'm always smiling. I'm always happy. I have a very positive attitude, and I try to share that with the people that I'm working with, or share that with the people that I support. That as a young infantry officer, my company commander used to say, you smile too much. And and so he says, we have to give you some nasty pills. But anyway, you just have to be who you are. And throughout my career, just I mentioned General Amos, who became a commandant, worked around Jim Mattis, who became Secretary of Defense. Just a great individual, a great role model. And you can just see, again, it's kind of caring about the mission, or caring about executing what it is you have to do, but also caring about your people, making sure that they're taken care of. And that's kind of, as regional director in the microcosm, it's not commanding, but it's supporting the 17 clubs that we have. And Rick, I have to get on you. You didn't have the mighty in front of Mid-Atlantic.
I forgot to mention that too, because I was fortunate enough to sit in on one of those Zoom calls during the pandemic where you had everybody organized throughout the Mid-Atlantic, all the people you just mentioned, and getting a glimpse into what that's like to sort of cover that much geography. And I forgot about the mighty Mid-Atlantic, because we are, of course. But within that mighty Mid-Atlantic, you have a real variety, because if we're talking about somebody in Northern Virginia, well, that's an awful lot of people, probably a lot more Notre Dame alums than we have maybe in Gettysburg. So you have the small clubs, you have the larger ones. I'm sure there's differences in the demographics of those groups. How do you account for that in your support or your organization?
Well, we have 17 clubs in the Mid-Atlantic, and they range, as you mentioned, in size from AA, Pittsburgh and DC, down to F, which Gettysburg is in that group of the smaller clubs. And it's really, with the current position as regional director, as I was a president of the Greensburg club, which was a D-sized club, Greensburg Uniontown, a president there for 6 years. And at leadership conference, or sometimes you would have an interaction with the club. But one of the things that I strove to do as president was to, make sure, we did a lot of things with the Notre Dame Club of Pittsburgh. And, I don't know if you guys remember, but in 2013, we organized a group from our club and came to the Battlefield Mass there at Gettysburg and attended your UND celebration. So I think, kind of supporting other clubs, and you mentioned the pandemic, it's provided sort of a perfect opportunity with capabilities like Zoom, that we're able to get together over long distances, share ideas, share programming and things like that. That I think has been one thing that I've tried to encourage for the different clubs. And your Corby Connections is a great example of something that you do for your club locally, but other clubs can dial in from across the NDAA, not just in our region, but dial in and see and learn from the different personalities that you have during these programs.
Well, thank you for that recognition. The Notre Dame Club of Gettysburg, in the words of no less than Lou Nanni, is small but mighty. Those were his words, and I think that fits. There's long before my time with the club, there are just some very motivated people who love the University of Notre Dame, who love the values for which it stands, and want to be in their community representing those values. So only through support of people out in South Bend and people like you does that become possible. So I'm going to kick it back over to Rick, but I wanted to thank you, Michael, for your time and sharing all of those experiences and those insights. And thank you for being the leader of the mighty Mid-Atlantic.
Well, thank you, guys. And I will say too, the Gettysburg, you guys are thinkers in as far as you come up with very creative ideas and ways to support your community and represent Notre Dame, but you're also doers. And to me, that is the mark of a great club, is that, you don't just say, well, here's something, and then, you go out and fix a problem, or you go out and support your community and bring Notre Dame there. And I'm, proud to have Gettysburg as a member of the mighty Mid-Atlantic. And thank you again. It's been an honor being with you guys tonight.
Hey, Michael, again, this is Rick. Thank you for taking your time and as being a proud parent of a Naval Academy grad of 2011. We want to thank you very much for your service to our country, not only to our NDAA. And like Pat said, without your leadership, Gettysburg would not be where it's at. So we appreciate your support and thank you for joining us this evening.
Well, thank you guys, and go mighty Mid-Atlantic, go Irish, and go
Go
Indy
Irish.
Club.
Yep. Thank
Go
you very much.
Go Indy Club of Gettysburg.
Yep. Thank you.